The weather is about to change quite a bit over the next 7 days, where we're going to be dealing with a scorching heat wave across a very large chunk of the United States. On the flip side of things, we'll be dealing with a larger summertime cool down across another part of the United States. And in addition to this, we're going to be watching for a little bit more severe weather today and tomorrow across areas like the East Coast. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather across the United States over the next 7 days. But let's begin with what's happening across the United States right now, and we'll begin with the two features that are really the most dominant across the United States. The first of which is this ridge. This is essentially going to be a heat dome, otherwise even known as a death ridge this time of the year, where we're going to be dealing with some scorching heat across the southern and central plains, even back through the Rocky Mountains and into the southwest. We're going to be talking about many areas exceeding 100 to even sometimes 110 degrees between now all the way through the end of the week. It is a brutal weather pattern, but on the flip side of things, if you're anywhere just east really of Kansas, you might be a little bit happier because we have this low pressure system back over in Canada and just to the east of Michigan, and this is actually allowing for cooler weather to usher in behind it, and we are going to see a much cooler weather pattern for the majority of the eastern tier of the United States as we go throughout the week. So that's some good news. In addition to that, we are going to be watching for severe weather today and perhaps even tomorrow, anywhere from about Pennsylvania and New York back in parts of Georgia and even Florida, where there will be a potential for damaging winds, large hail, and even maybe an isolated tornado. Now let's talk more about that severe weather potential for today and tomorrow, and we'll begin with today, which looks like a really skinny dolphin. We have a huge area that we're looking at for severe weather, anywhere from the central plains back through the east coast and even into the southeast. We also have a slight risk which looks like a banana, anywhere from about Pennsylvania and New Jersey back into Louisiana and Arkansas, and we also have a marginal threat back over in parts of Montana, Idaho, and even in through Utah, where the main concern today is going to be wind and hail back over here, but we are watching for all modes of severe weather, predominantly though back over here near Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. The main concern in nature will be wind today. There will be some isolated hail as well. So here's the wind that we're looking at for today. Again, just a general risk for damaging winds. It'll be relatively scattered in that yellow shaded area, and then our hail risk is confined to really 3 different areas, one of which will be in Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas, and as well as Colorado. The other one being back near the Dixie Alley, and then the other one will be in the mid-Atlantic region where some isolated large hail will be possible. But we are looking a little bit more of a tornado risk today compared to yesterday. Now, yesterday's tornado risk was actually outlined in Kentucky and Ohio. They ended up removing it before storms actually got going, and we never actually saw any sort of tornado threat really materialize there. But here over in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia, we actually could see an isolated tornado or two later today. We are going to be on alert here if we have to go live, so just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel down below. We might get an isolated tornado or two if things get crazy. Definitely a possibility that we do go live later today. Now tomorrow the severe weather threat does die down, and we'll probably not have any more live streams until September, at least what it looks like if we don't go live today. There is a few marginal threats, one in Louisiana, one back over in the mid-Atlantic, and then a little thumbs down or even a finger going through parts of Colorado back through Montana. Main concern will be wind and hail tomorrow, and then the tornado risk right now looks very close to 0. Now today's tornado risk is relatively low, but the main area and the main corridor that we're going to be watching for will be between about 12 to 6 o'clock. It's going to be mostly from New York back into, again, Maryland, parts of New Jersey as well. Tornado parameter values do not look overly crazy today, but really, again, there could just be an isolated spin up or two, maybe a brief tornado sometime during the afternoon hours. By the time we go after 6 to 7 o'clock tonight, the tornado threat is near 0. So it's really going to be mostly an afternoon risk, which is good news because most people will be awake and probably at least vigilant if there is anything that does go crazy, which again, I don't think today's going to go crazy, but it is definitely a day to still be monitoring because we're not really just talking about an isolated threat for storms, because they're actually going to be pretty numerous to widespread today. Watch this by about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Storms are really firing up in both New York, Pennsylvania, and even back near Maryland and Virginia. They're going to explode pretty quickly with mostly a wind threat, but again, an isolated tornado definitely possible out of any supercells that can become a bit more discreet. By the time we get closer to 5 to 6 o'clock, those storms are moving towards New York City. Most of these storms will be moving offshore by 7 to 8, and anything that's still left over will be just predominantly wind. And then after that, we're kind of done with this. We'll have another shot for a few more storms tomorrow afternoon as well, back over in Virginia, Delaware, and Maryland. Overall, tomorrow, though, looks predominantly like a wind threat. I do not see there being a whole lot of tornado risk tomorrow. Here's what we're looking at in the southeast for today. Storms will be just blowing up, kind of exploding at random. We'll have a couple complexes most likely likely to develop. These will be moving mostly north to south, producing predominantly, again, just a wind threat. As we go into the evening hours, the storms will continue to move into Georgia. We could see a few storms near northern Florida, but it does remain a little bit uncertain if storms really get going there. If any do get going, it'll be mostly, again, a wind threat there. Now, for the rest of the United States for today, a few storms out there in Nebraska and South Dakota this morning. Those will kind of collapse down towards Kansas City later today, and then after that, we're not really looking at a whole lot of reinitiation. By the time we go into Monday, more storms will fire up right around that high pressure system, and they will continue to dump rain anywhere from Arizona and New Mexico all the way back up through parts of Montana, and then things are drying out and clearing out for the majority of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Dixie Alley as we go throughout Monday afternoon. Now, our weather pattern for the next week or two is going to be very, very, very easy to understand because there's not going to be a whole lot changing really over the next couple weeks, at least by the looks of it for now. We have this high pressure system in the upper levels that is dominating the Great Plains, and this ridge that we have in place is basically going to be a wall preventing any sort of low pressure systems from entering the United States, aside from maybe something trying to squeak by into Canada that might bring some like rain into like Montana or something, but nothing major currently is in the forecast. On the other side of things, we do have a low pressure system back over in the northeast. This will continue to usher in cooler air for the next several days. It'll continue to kind of bring some nicer relief basically for the entire eastern tier of the United States, probably throughout the rest of this week. By the weekend, things might start to change a little bit. The high pressure system likely to start moving a little bit more to the east. Low pressure system back over on the west coast could eject, and that could get pretty interesting. If this does all happen, we could actually end up getting some sort of severe weather event, perhaps even an outbreak back over in parts of the northern plains and perhaps even the upper Midwest by next weekend. If this does happen, it is definitely going to get very interesting weather-wise before we go into the last week of August. But this is still a bit of a question mark. But if this does end up happening, we are probably going to be talking about some level of a severe weather outbreak back over in the northern plains. For the next few days, though, overall, again, high pressure will be dominating on the surface-based level back over in the Midwest and throughout the Ohio Valley. Things are going to stay relatively quiet and dry probably through Friday. And then if this low pressure system does develop, we could be talking about an outbreak somewhere up here in the northern plains. Remains very uncertain at this point if this even happens, but it is something to watch for. The European model on the latest run keeps this low pressure system mostly just in Canada and kind of keeps capping in place and low moisture levels back over in the northern plains. So there might be some problems with the overall setup even if this did happen, but it is something to watch for in case we do end up seeing severe weather. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this. And then as we go into the following week, things do look, again, just relatively quiet for most of the country. The temperatures for the next several days, again, big cold air mass across the eastern tier. That'll continue to keep things cooler. Warm air builds across the Great Plains, and that'll be the trend all the way through the weekend. It'll start to warm back up in the Midwest and back through the Northeast as we go into next weekend, so just be vigilant about that. And then things will stay pretty warm across the southern tier of the United States, as it usually is this time of the year. These are the high temperatures for Monday in the United States. Look at this pocket of 100-degree weather in Texas and Oklahoma. Many areas will be getting close to record high temperatures. Wichita Falls currently forecasted at 110 degrees for Monday. It is going to be brutally hot. Tuesday's not going to be much different either. And even as we go later into the week, that heat is not really going much of anywhere. Even by Friday, the heat will move a little west, but even then, it is going to be scorching hot across much of Texas. So just be ready for that. Here's what's left of Ernesto. Ernesto is still moving off to the north and northeast. It moved through Bermuda. Overall, this is going to be moving away from the United States. No impacts expected to our area. And overall, it looks pretty mediocre at this point. Not nearly as organized of a hurricane as it once was, which is good news. It is going to be basically a fish storm from here on out. So no more briefings on Ernesto will be needed after today's forecast. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.